And I think in the end, we have a responsibility to the rest of the world. Most of the CO2 is red, white, and blue, which is up there. You cannot preach temperance from a bar stool. You cannot tell China and India, you should stop. If the countries, along with the EU, that are most responsible for the creation of the problem, continue to engage in the very same activities. So we need to have the moral and political platform from which to provide the leadership to the rest of the world, and the alternative technologies that can be developed in those countries, deployed in those countries, which would substitute for the pathway which the United States went down. And so, yeah, I don't think we have an option. I think that we have to think comprehensively. I think the rest of the world would respond if we did take that leadership role. I think that the whole world wants the US and China to partner in the 21st century, but until we begin to lead, we should have no expectations that China is going to follow.
I'm really curious to talk a little bit more about distributed and residential scale solutions, and in particular as we look at energy efficiency retrofits and renewable energy installations that are by nature local jobs. One of the most powerful financing vehicles for that is PACE, property tax financing, which is currently under attack by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And I'm curious to hear if that's something that you've been looking at, and is there anything aside from a regulatory or legislative rather fix that can address that issue?
Yes.
Do you see any possibilities?
Thank you.
Fix PACE.
Yeah, I think that you put your finger on a big issue. I have spoken with Attorney General Jerry Brown on this issue. I know he's leading the effort against Freddie and Fannie. I support him 100%. I think he is absolutely correct that we must ensure that that people are not disincentivized in deploying renewable technologies, more energy efficiency in their homes. And as California goes, so will go the nation. So it's very important for that to be won out here, and I'm glad that Jerry Brown is giving the leadership. I might also add that the same thing is true for this referendum that you're having out here in California, that the two oil companies from Texas have put on the ballot to basically rescind the laws dealing with climate change in the state of California. You cannot lose this issue out here. It's an imperative for you to beat back these two Texas oil companies. They are only interested in the short-term profitability of their shareholders. They are not interested in the creation of renewable energy jobs here in California, of saving the planet, of backing out imported oil. Okay? That is not their agenda. And those who are in this room, this is the time, this is the place, you are the people. And you can create a very nice campaign out here that will draw national and international attention to your state. And if you win here, I think we can win everywhere. If they lose here, the oil companies, they can lose everywhere. Okay? So just know that on both of those issues, both on PACE and on the climate change referendum that will destroy your efforts out here, that you have a real chance, once again, to be the leaders.
My concern is with what I see as a disconnect between the demands of the climate science and the political reality of how far we can get. I mean, for example, the 17% proposed in Copenhagen, if you put it back in 1990 levels, it's 3 to 4%. It's not what so many countries around the world require the United States to step forward with, and it's certainly not what the science demands. Do you see this as a way to open the door and then maybe go further later? Or is this as far as you want to go, and do we even have time?
You know, somebody came up to Adlai Stevenson in the 1952 race and said, "Adlai, great news, every thinking voter is with you." And he said, "That's great," he said, "but I need a majority," you know? So we have a lot of work to do. All issues go through 3 phases: political education, political activation, political implementation. So when an iceberg 4 times the size of Manhattan breaks off of Greenland, it's just one additional step towards ultimately having legislation passed. If I had my way, the legislation would be much more bold. Okay? If I had my way, the Markey Amendment on fuel economy standards 35 miles an hour wouldn't have gotten 155 votes in 2001 on the House floor. But in 2007, it passed. The fact that it took 6 years is a test of all of us. Politics is not for sprinters. It's a marathon. Martin Luther King used to say that the arc of history bends towards, it's long, but it bends towards justice. It also bends towards comprehensive climate change legislation passing. But you have to stick with it and know that more allies are on the way. In the same way that the young people, the freedom riders, went south. In the same way that the young women, the suffragettes, rose up. So too, the green generation is arriving, okay, as voters and as powerful forces inside the community who are going to demand this change. And while we might start later and at a lower level than you like, we can intensify it in the later years in a way that avoids the worst consequences. If we haven't already reached the tipping point, which is my hope, then we still have time to save the planet.
We have to end it there. Our thanks to Ed Markey, Chair of the House Select Committee.